Hi everybody, welcome to this next video. So in this one we're going to look at completing the square. So I'm going to talk you through the process of completing the square, what that actually does and what that tells us, and then actually how we then solve by completing the square. I'm going to look at it in two forms, one where an x squared is just a one like this, and then we'll look at some other questions like this here where the x squared is greater than 1. So let's dive straight in. The first thing you need to think about is, what is the question actually asking you to do? So where it says express x squared plus 10x minus 4 in the form of this notation here is completing the square. Okay? So what you need to identify is that the process you need to do when it asks you to do this is complete the square. Now sometimes it might just solve by completing the square, but sometimes it has it represented like that. And at that point you go, right, okay, I need to complete the square. So I'm going to show you basically a shortcut to save you having to learn another formula. I'm just going to show you a shortcut that I use when I'm teaching and something that makes things a little bit easier. So first thing I'm going to do is going to label these A, B and C just so that you can know what I'm referring to when I'm talking about the certain values. And also when we do the next video on the quadratic formula, having those values labelled A, B and C, that will help you understand them as well. So let's just think about this straight away. The first thing I'm going to do is half the B value. Okay, so the first thing to remember is to half your B value. Now my B value in this case is 10, so that now becomes 5. Once you half your B value, you then put that in brackets. Now we're only going to have one bracket. As you can see here, there is only one bracket, so I'm going to have an x, then that half the B value plus 5 in brackets. And then because the notation has this squared on the outside, I put the squared on the outside there. So step 1, half your B value. Half of 10 is 5. Because it's a positive 10, this becomes a positive 5. Put that in the brackets, and then that's your first step done. Now we move on to the next bit. What you then do is you square this new B value. Okay? So this new B value is 5. So I square 5, you turn it negative, and it's always negative. Even if it was a minus 5 in the brackets, you still turn it negative. So 5 squared is 25. I then turn it negative, becomes minus 25, and put this outside the brackets. So put this outside the brackets. Okay? So what we have is square the new B value. So 5 squared is 25. Turn it negative, so it becomes minus 25. Put it outside the brackets. And then your final step, well, penultimate step, is bring down the C value. So bring down the C value. And the C value here for me is minus 4. So you bring down the C value. And then finally, all you do is tidy this up and simplify. So it becomes x plus 5 all squared. And then minus 25 minus 4 becomes minus 29. And now you can see that that looks like that format. So I've completed the square. If you wanted to check that that actually works, well, let's go through the process of checking it. So taking that, I can then say, well, x plus 5 all squared is the same as doing x plus 5 brackets x plus 5. So that would give me x squared plus 5x plus 5x plus 25, which when I tidy that up becomes x squared plus 10x plus 25. And then we've obviously got this minus 29 as well. So x squared plus 10x and then 25 minus 29 gives you minus 4. So actually when I go through the process of expanding it all, I end up with the original expression that I had up here, x squared plus 10x minus 4, x squared plus 10x minus 4. Okay, if you want to now, pause the video, have a go at the next one underneath, following those steps, see if you can complete the square for this one. And I'll go through it, unpause the video, and then you can see me going through it now. So half that B value becomes x minus 2. So be careful here that instead of it being plus 5 there that I turn it to, it now becomes minus 2. Square that 2, it becomes 4. So put my squared there, sorry. But then so square your B value that you've just made, which is minus 2. Turn it negative. Remember, it always becomes negative. Then bring down your C value, becomes plus 7. So you should end up having x minus 2 all squared, then minus 4 plus 7 gives you plus 3. That's your answer. That is in the correct format for that. If I wanted to check it to make sure that what I've done is correct, it says x minus 2 all squared and then plus 3. Well, that gives you x squared minus 2x plus 4, and then your plus 3, x squared minus 4x plus 7 would be my final answer, which is what I have up here. So I know that actually my answer here in the correct format of completing the square is the right answer. Okay, let's look at now these two different examples here. So the difference being that in the previous examples there was no equal sign. So we're now moving here onto the concept of solving. Okay, so there are 3 ways you can solve a quadratic. You can either factorise it, which we've spoken about in a previous video. You can use a quadratic formula, which I will, which you can look at in another video as well, or you can complete the square, which is what we're going to be looking at in this video. So the process is the same. So if you want to pause the video and go through the process of completing the square again, do that first, and then I'll explain the last few steps. So completing the square, x plus 3, because I'm halving that b value, halving 6, all squared. Square your b value, my new b value is 3, turn it negative, so 3 squared is 9, turn it negative, and then bring down your c value of plus 4. So it becomes x plus 3, all squared, minus 9 plus 4, so I've missed a bracket there, minus 9 plus 4 is minus 5, but then you're saying now equals 0. So the only difference between what we did up here, there was no equal sign, it didn't equal 0. And remember that anytime you are solving a quadratic, it must equal 0. So we've got it equal 0, so I put my equal 0 there. Right, now we go through a process of solving. The concept here of solving is that we're trying to get x on its own. So we've now got to reverse the formula and work backwards. So to get x on its own, the first thing I'm going to move is this minus 5. So I take the minus 5 over the other side, and it becomes x plus 3, all squared, is equal to, that's a positive 5 now. From there, that minus 5 has been dealt with. I now need to deal with this squared part. The opposite of squared is square root. So you're saying x plus 3 is now equal to the square root of 5. Because if you want to think about it, taking something over the equal sign, you're taking the squared over the equal sign, and the opposite of squared is square root. But there is a key thing that you need to remember here. Whenever you square root a number, the answer is a positive or a minus. If you want to think about that, if I said to you, what is the square root of 16? Most of you would say 4. But actually, the square root of 16 is also minus 4, because minus 4 times minus 4 gives you 16, and a positive 4 times a positive 4 gives you 16. So anytime you square root a number, you have 2 answers, a positive answer and a negative answer. From here, finishing this off, I take this plus 3 over, goes over the other side, and it becomes a minus 3. Remember, when you're moving something over an equal sign, it becomes a negative. So your answer becomes x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5. We don't know what the square root of 5 is, and then minus 3. That looks like that format, so that's good. Or you can write it like this. You can say x is equal to the positive square root of 5 minus 3, or x is equal to the negative square root of 5 minus 3. Remember, a quadratic will have 2 solutions when you solve it. So first bit here, exactly the same process, complete the square as normal, and then the next part is just a rearrangement and just remembering that whenever you square root something, it has a positive and a negative answer. Okay, this next one's a little bit more complicated, and the thing that makes it complicated is this 2 at the start. Now, if you ever have to complete the square for a quadratic where there is a value of x squared that is greater than 1, the first thing you do is factorise out the 2. Okay, so factorise out the 2 here. What I mean by that is I say, right, 2 is in every part of this. So I go 2, brackets, then x squared. How do I go from 2 to get it to 6? Well, I times it by 3, so it becomes 3x. Or effectively what you're saying is I'm halving that to put it in here. And then how do I go from 2 to get it to minus 10? I times it by minus 5. So I've factorised out that 2 in that first step. What you need to now do is ignore the 2 for a minute. I want you to just treat this bracket as if you're going to complete the square here and do your completing the square process as normal. So half your b value, my b value is now 3, so it becomes x plus 1.5 all squared. From here, you would then square your new b value, turn it negative. Well, 1.5 squared is 2.25, turn it negative, minus 2.25, and then the same process is bring down your c value, minus 5. Let me explain all that again. Factorise out the 2 from the top. So you take your 2, put it on the outside of the brackets. How do I get 2 to 2x squared? I times it by x squared. How do I get 2 to make it 6x? Times it by 3. How do I get 2 to get it to minus 10? Times it by minus 5. You are now ignoring this 2 and you complete the square for what is in the brackets here, which is why I've got another set of brackets here, because I halve my b value, put it in brackets. That becomes the completed square process there. If that confuses you, what you could do is get rid of those initial brackets there and then put them back in at the end once you've done it, because the 2 still needs to come down. Okay, from here I'm going to leave that 2 on the outside still. I'm going to put x plus 1.5 all squared, and then I'm going to tidy this bit up. Minus 2.25 minus 5 is minus 7.25. Close my bracket. And then the final step for this, the thing that makes it a little bit harder because you've got an additional step to do, is you're basically saying, right, well, 2 multiplied by that is 2 brackets x plus 1.5 all squared. You don't have to fully expand that. And then you've got to do your 2 multiplied by 7.25. In this case, it's a minus 7.25, so it becomes minus 14.5. Okay, so that is now in the correct format of what we have here. In the next video I do about completing the square, I will talk not just about how you complete square and solving it, but I will talk about how you can then use it to plot quadratic graphs and how actually completing the square gives you the turning point. But this video is solely about the process of completing the square and then solving using completing the square. Hope it makes sense. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.